Good evening and welcome to Cooperative Vermont. We're coming to you live from VCAM Studios this April 7th, 2013. I'm Matthew Kropp.
And I'm Eric Davis.
And we've got a pretty busy show this evening. We've got a number of co-op news items to run down. Some very exciting things have been happening, and it seems like the pace of co-op news seems to be picking up lately, which is interesting. And then we've got an interview with John Quinney, the General Manager of the Energy Co-op of Vermont, who will be digging into sort of a lot of their programs, their collaborations with other co-ops, and the history of that organization. But first, the news.
Yeah. So a tremendously exciting event yesterday that Matt, I know I saw you there. I believe you were filming some of it as well. The founding members of the Keep BT Local campaign, the campaign to form a group to put themselves in position to transform Burlington Telecom into a consumer cooperative, had their bylaws, had their initial founders meeting where members approved the bylaws and started to throw out nominations for the board of directors and got that process going. So it was really tremendously exciting.
Yeah, it was one of those things where we've both been involved in sort of the very first episode of the show was Don Schramm coming on to talk about the kind of at that point nascent project. And so walking into this meeting, I didn't really know exactly what to expect, but there were probably close to 100 people sort of packed in there. There's a lot of really good energy, and it's one of those things where I left feeling pretty optimistic. So
absolutely,
I think we're going to show a clip of a short just of the kind of moment in which the bylaws themselves were, the process by which the bylaws themselves were approved by the group. And going forward, if you want to get involved in this project, you can go to the Keep BT Local website to pledge as a member. Kind of get in touch with your city councilors if you live in Burlington, encouraging them that the co-op is really the way to go in terms of Burlington Telecom's future. So check out this little clip, and we'll be back with a few other news items and our interview with John Quinney.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first ask for someone to make a motion, someone who's got a green sticker. That's your authority to make such motions. And I'll come right back to you. And then after there's a motion and a second, if there's conversation about the bylaws or questions, we'll answer those. And then we'll call the question. So, Laredo.
Mr. Moderator, I move that we approve the bylaws as posted on the website.
That Laredo man, he's quick. Yes. And your name is? Charles. Thank you. What's your last name, Charles? Great. So we have a motion and a second to adopt the bylaws. And so are there questions or comments about this before we actually call the question and take the vote? Terry.
I'm Terry Green, and I've been involved in a lot of co-ops and bylaws writing and so on. I hope to be involved with this. My email address had a typo, and I wasn't part of the discussion. But there's an amendment that's up there, which I'm going to propose in just a moment. That's the existing language on amending the bylaws. You'll see those all caps in the middle. The notion is that I think the bylaws are good for starting the organization. They are sufficient. My view is that they are not good for running an organization years in the future. I think there's some serious defects, but we don't need to deal with them today. But one of the problems that I had was that the way the bylaws are structured, only the board of directors or a substantial petition effort, getting 50 or 100 members to sign a petition, could initiate a bylaws amendment. I think that once we're up and running and have assets, there will be changes to bylaws that will be appropriate, and that the board of directors inherently has a conflict of interest in terms of what the bylaws say about their own powers. For example, the bylaws say that they will control the election process. A future board might decide we're going to have an election Tuesday at 10 a.m. at corporate offices, must be present to vote, or whatever. We don't know. But the point is, we need an independent way of assessing the bylaws and proposing changes to members. So the amendment merely inserts that a bylaws committee will also be authorized to present bylaws amendments. This means, in my view, any defects in the existing bylaws we don't have to fret about today. So I would move that this amendment to add the word by the bylaws committee into the amendment section of the bylaws.
Just a quick question, Terry, is this phrase, is this connected to anything else in the bylaws? Is there a bylaws committee that's organizing the bylaws or anything like that?
No,
So you're suggesting just
I
this?
suggested adding the phrase about creating a bylaws committee, but the feeling was that short and sweet, it implies the existence of such a committee. I would propose, I would hope people would support that any member who wanted to be on the bylaws committee could be on the bylaws committee. It wouldn't just be members of the board. That's the intent, is that it's a way of doing it without the board. But there is something else in the bylaws. There wasn't some earlier in the presentation, you may remember the nominating committee talked about bylaws revision committee. That's not in the bylaws, and this sort of puts it into the bylaws.
Loretta, hang on one second. Loretta, you had a question coming?
That's a second.
Thanks. So Wendy is seconding so we can actually have the conversation. Loretta?
I'd be happy to accept that as a friendly amendment, so we don't need to vote on it.
Any other conversation or question about that suggestion? So the idea was, Loretta said you felt like this was a friendly amendment, didn't need a separate vote, that you just add that phrase in and be just peachy with him. Any other questions, comments, thoughts on the bylaws? Yes?
I'm concerned that there's no provision in there holding the directors harmless.
I believe there is an indemnification clause in there.
We will be taking out director's insurance.
I know, but that doesn't hold them harmless. That simply creates an entity to pay in the event that they are sued, and it also has its limits.
There isn't a clause in here about indemnification, which is a pretty standard holding harmless. So that section 412. Is that what you were asking about? Other questions, comments? So what I hear so far is you all have studied these weeks on end, you've read them through, you love them so much you can't even believe it. Terry has offered a minor revision. Loretta said it sounds like it fits right in. And so I'm going to ask the question, with this phrase added into the bylaws that were proposed by the bylaws committee, I'm going to ask for who would like to approve those bylaws. Just raise your hands. Looks like a majority. I'm not going to count, but let me just hands down. Anyone voting against the bylaws as proposed? So is it enough to say that was a unanimous consent? Looks good to me. Means you all did a lot of great work going into it. Thank you so much. You've got to love when the first order of business is that easy, right? That's very auspicious. I'm sure everything from here on out will be just that way too.
That was the kind of moment that the co-op really sort of became a legal entity.
Yes.
Well, that and the actual paperwork being filed. But so the nominating committee is meeting this week. So anyone out there who's interested, who would like to join and would be interested in throwing their hat in the ring for the board of directors, can do so for the next week, and then there'll be a 2-week balloting period, and then the board will be composed, and the co-op will be up and running.
Mm-hmm. And there's 12 candidates as at the end of the meeting yesterday, so it looks like a great field.
Yeah. So another kind of upcoming event that's kind of big for our cooperative economy is this Cooperative Vermont is helping put on the State of Vermont's Cooperative Economy, which will be a panel with 6 representatives of different co-op sectors at UVM on April 17th. It will be held at 6:30 p.m. at the Waterman Memorial Lounge on UVM's campus, and it'll be kind of these 6 people will be reporting back about each one of their particular sectors, and then they'll be followed by kind of a question and answer period for anyone who's interested to sort of ask any one of them or multiple people questions about both their sectors and also sort of the co-op economy in general.
Right, and that's the kickoff event to the Vermont New Economy Series as well.
Which will be culminating with an event on April 27th.
Right. So next Wednesday, please come out and join us.
Next Thursday, but next Wednesday is another important event too.
Next this Wednesday.
This Wednesday.
This
sorry,
Wednesday.
yes.
So next Wednesday is the Vermont
Right, yeah, sorry.
panel. This Wednesday is Credit Union Day at the State House, so hope to see a lot of cooperators there as well. The Association of Vermont Credit Unions is organizing a credit union day to sort of talk to legislators about issues facing Vermont's credit unions.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be going from 1:30 to 6 p.m. And already they've announced Governor Shumlin will be giving a little talk. The heads of both of the finance and banking committees of both the Senate and the House will be there. So there'll be a good mix of people to sort of ask questions about. And I know I'm definitely going. And one thing that I'll be bringing up will be the question of if there are any kind of legal or regulatory hurdles to credit unions providing kind of financial support to other co-ops, and if there are, really sort of what work can be done to sort of to minimize or eliminate those.
Great.
And then finally, another event, which is the event that is this Thursday, is the Vermont Federal Credit Union annual meeting. Which Eric, you're a board member there, so
yes.
Do you want to fill in the details?
The meeting will be held at the Sheraton in Burlington. It starts with a dinner. So the dinner starts 5 or 5:30.
I think the doors open at 5, and the dinner served at 6:15.
Dinner served at 6:15, and the business meeting starts at 7:15. So all Vermont federal members, we hope to see a lot of you there. Matt, I think you'll be there.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, we're definitely going to try to have a good turnout and practice a little bit of democracy from the floor. So yeah, and of course, for anyone who's interested in keeping track of the latest co-op news, you can always check the feed on our Facebook page. We're updating that usually several times a day now. So anything that's on the co-op radar will end up there. But now we'd like to sort of transition to the next part of the show, which I think we've both been pretty excited about this. We have John Quinney in the studio. John is the general manager of the Energy Co-op of Vermont. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I was thinking maybe to start off, you could talk a little bit about what the Energy Co-op of Vermont is, kind of what its history is, how it came to be, sort of the fairly kind of active organization that it is now.
Mm-hmm. The Energy Co-op of Vermont has been around for about 13 years now. And we deliver heating oil, kerosene, and wood pellets to about 2,500 people, about 2,000 of whom are members of the co-op. We also, like a lot of other fuel dealers, maintain, replace, repair heating systems, furnaces, boilers, and space heaters. And most recently, we launched our co-op solar program, which is a way for co-op members and others to add solar hot water to their homes.
And what was the sort of the initiative to found, like when was it founded? Mm-hmm. What was the kind of initiative around sort of starting the Energy Co-op?
The roots of the co-op came out of the movement to deregulate electricity markets in the late 90s, and a number of Vermonters involved in the energy field were concerned about the impact that would have in Vermont, particularly on low-income Vermonters. So they got together and organized and were successful in obtaining a fairly large federal grant to do the market research and the business development and business planning for a consumer's energy co-op. So that cooperative was formed in the summer of 2000, and it got into business by securing a loan from the National Cooperative Services Corporation, and that was used to purchase Miller Oil Company, which was a local oil dealer based in Colchester. So the co-op started delivering heating oil to about 1,800 people in September of 2000.
And what is your kind of like, how did you get involved in the co-op?
I was involved in a startup called Native Energy, which was involved in marketing carbon offsets and renewable energy credits. And it was a very early stage startup, so we were all volunteering our time, and I needed to earn some money. So I found the ad for the co-op general manager, and I applied for the job, and I was hired. So that was in October of 2001.
At what point was that in the co-op's development? That's rather close to the beginning.
It was. The co-op had been in business for just over a year, and we're looking for a new general manager at that time. So it was very early on. We inherited the employees from the oil company. We didn't have our own service department. That was subcontracted. In September of the following year was the first annual meeting that we had. It was all very early days. And for me in particular, I didn't have any background in the fuel oil business. So for me, there was a lot of learning about what's involved, because even though we're organized as a co-op, and that's important, we also had to be able to take care of business. And taking care of business was delivering heating oil to people when they needed it, making sure they didn't run out, and if their furnaces broke, making sure that they got fixed.
Mm-hmm. So when you say you didn't have a background in heating oil, what is your background? Kind of what was your personal journey that led you to this position?
Well, I don't have a thing called a career path, I don't think. I was formally educated in organic chemistry. I spent some time at Goddard College in the late 70s, early 80s. I worked for about 12 years at the New Alchemy Institute on Cape Cod, and that was an ecological research and education organization. It was founded by, one of the founders was John Todd, who's been a prof at UVM for a number of years until he recently retired. So I spent 10 years there and was particularly interested in permaculture and ecological design. And after that, I spent some time starting and running an environmental store in Burlington, and then spent some time working with Green Mountain Energy, which was an offshoot from Green Mountain Power, and that was formed to market renewable electricity products in the states that had deregulated their electric markets, particularly California and Pennsylvania. I also spent some time working on the oil rigs in the North Sea somewhere.
So one thing that I'm curious about is this. This co-op was formed. I find this really interesting. It was formed from buying an existing business, and you say the employees transitioned over. Did the customer base transition over as well, or what did that look like?
Yeah, they did. Miller Oil Company, when the co-op purchased it, had around 1,800 customers. And I don't think we know exactly how many of those stayed with the co-op and how many left, but we started out, we had 0 members and 1,800 customers. And so over the years, a good number of those customers became members because membership pricing was better and the membership benefits were somewhat attractive to them. I'm sure we lost some because there are people who are suspicious of co-ops or not interested in co-ops or just want a straight oil dealer. We don't want any of this co-op nonsense. And what do you mean you're charging me money in order to deliver me my oil? So I'm sure we lost some, but over the years we built up our membership from the original 0, and now we have about 2,000 members and about another 500 customers. So we provide products and services to about 2,500 people altogether.
Because one thing that I find very interesting is the sort of differences in identity between someone who is a customer versus someone who's a member of a co-op. And so it seems like in your case there's this sort of period of transition where people were in one role and then they moved into the other role. Kind of how quickly did that transition happen? Was it when you first started out and had the 0 members? Was there a certain percentage who were kind of like on board right away? And
I don't remember exactly, but I think within 2 or 3 years we probably had we probably had about 1,800 members, and some of those were new people who were attracted to the co-op. They weren't original Miller Oil customers, but when they heard about the co-op, they joined because they prefer to do business with a co-op rather than with a oil dealer. So I think fairly quickly we got up to about 1,800 members, and it's been slower going since then. And some of that's because the oil market, particularly in Chittenden County, which is where most of our business is, the oil market has been shrinking, and that's because a lot of people every year switch to natural gas, and new construction is mostly propane or natural gas. So if you want to grow your oil customers, you have to take them from other oil dealers. So,
Speaking of membership, what does it take to become a member of the co-op, and what sort of benefits do members receive?
it's $12 a year to be a member, unless you join at this time of year when it's free. Memberships renew every year in early July, and you get access. You get you get better pricing than if you're not a member on oil and kerosene deliveries. You get access to our service plan for heating equipment. You get access to monthly payment plans, so you can spread your bills out instead of getting stuck with a big bill each time you get an oil or a pellet delivery. And you also get access to price protection programs that we offer for heating oil. You also, as a member, you get 10% off energy audits with a company that we use to provide them to our members.
And so you guys started off as like a purely selling oil, but then from what we've seen, you've diversified. What other kind of projects was that sort of the initial intention to get into a more diverse, have a more diverse kind of product portfolio, or what was the path there?
Well, if you go and look at our bylaws or the purpose statements in the bylaws, they're fairly broad, and they talk about providing energy products and services and providing our members with a range of choices and being of service to low-income Vermonters, and also supplying energy efficiency and renewables. So it's pretty much everything that's connected with energy is fair game. We focused on just oil and kerosene deliveries and servicing oil equipment for the first 8 years or so. What we found in the summer of 2008, I don't know if you remember, but that was when oil went up to $150 a barrel, and heating oil was up near $5 a gallon in the summer. And we found that our members, a significant number of our members were using less oil, and we didn't know what was going on. So we called them up and said, "Oh yeah, I put in a pellet stove. Oh yeah, I put in a pellet stove. Oh yeah, I put in a pellet stove." So people were putting in these stoves and buying wood pellets because oil was so expensive, and pellets were not only less expensive and a renewable, they were also they were less expensive and they were renewable. It gave people more sort of control having two fuel sources rather than one. So that led us to get into the pellet business. So we've been delivering wood pellets for about 4 years now, and I think the same impetus, with high oil prices and also our purpose, led us to get into solar hot water a couple of years ago. I don't believe that when heating oil is $4 a gallon, we're really providing the best service we can to our members by trying to sell them as much as we can. I think the best service we provide to our members is by helping them lower their energy bills, and so that may be home energy improvements, it may be wood pellets, it may be solar hot water, a whole lot of other things.
So in terms of the kind of percentages of your business, kind of what percentage of it is in the oil delivery, what percentage would you say is in the pellet delivery and the solar hot water, kind of as relative shares?
Well, we have about 2,500 members and customers that we supply with heating oil and kerosene. We have about 400 members and customers that we supply with wood pellets. And in last year and the start of this year, we've sold about 60 solar hot water systems. So that's roughly the mix.
Well, this is the second year of the solar hot water program, I believe. And I've seen a lot of interesting events in the news, and it seems like a lot of workshops. So what sort of reception have you seen from that program, and where do you see it going in the future?
I think the reception has been pretty good. Our responsibility is to market the program and educate our members and others about the advantages of solar hot water, and to help people figure out if solar hot water makes sense for them. It doesn't make sense for everyone. It depends on how you heat your hot water, how sunny your yard is, whether you've got a south-facing roof, and how many people there are in your home. So depending on those circumstances, solar hot water may be a good choice or it may not. Of course, if you use fossil fuels, whether it's oil or natural gas, and you want to reduce your fossil fuel use, then solar hot water is a good option. But the way that the program was, if you wanted to install a solar hot water system, typically the whole sort of process is complicated. You don't know which contractor to choose. You don't know how the pricing works. It's hard to figure out how the state incentives go. There's permits and paperwork and all this sort of stuff. So part of what we wanted to do was make the process as simple as possible. So we've partnered with a company called Sunwood, which is based in Shelburne, and they provide the return on investment analysis. They check out the locations to see if they're suitable for solar. They've got installers they work with who are certified by Renewable Energy Vermont. They do a really good job. So we've sort of made the process as simple and painless as possible for our members. And I forgot the start of your question, so I don't know if that answered it or not.
Yeah, and you brought up another interesting point there is partnering with other organizations, and you partnered with Vermont State Employees Credit Union to help with the financing of those projects.
Yeah.
So I was curious if you could speak to that partnership a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we've been working with VSECU for about 4 years now, and I think in the original relationship was as part of their VHEAT program, which is the credit union's fuel buyers group. Mm-hmm. I think most of the business for that is in central and southern Vermont in areas that we don't serve. But we deliver heating oil for a number of credit union members in Chittenden County and in Montpelier. And for the credit union members, the attractions are a really good price. And for us, the attractions are that we don't have any marketing expense and there's no bad debt because the credit union guarantees the payments. So it's a good relationship, and we're going to change a few things this year in the hope that we can sort of grow that part of our business. So we had the relationship with them for the VHEAT program, and then once we started Co-op Solar, VSECU has a very attractive range of renewable and energy efficiency loan programs. So they're a really good option for people who want to finance their solar hot water system. And then, because we'd worked with them and they were a credit union, when we purchased a pellet truck last year, we financed that through the credit union.
And so it's, this is one of those examples that, Principle 6 of the Cooperative Principles is cooperation between cooperatives, mm-hmm. and this is, I think, kind of one of the great kind of highlight examples in Vermont mm-hmm. right now of that mm-hmm. sort of cooperation. Yeah. Do you see that the energy co-op having other relationships with cooperatives, or is this kind of probably the most important, or what does that look like, your relationship to other co-ops in Vermont?
Well, I think with VSECU, that's the most obvious and the easiest one, because any organization needs banking services of one kind or another. I think VSECU is a little bit unusual amongst banks or credit unions because they have a broader mission than just providing banking service. They're interested in providing services that will help minimize the environmental impact of their members. So, not many banks or credit unions have that broader mission. But we're certainly open to other relationships with co-ops where they make sense. We just haven't uncovered any as yet.
And one sort of related thing, I think, would be in your relationship to other sort of energy-related co-ops in Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
I know you had mentioned that Avram Pat, who's a former mm-hmm. guest on the show and is the general manager of the Washington Electric Co-op, served on your board. Right. Kind of what is the kind of relationship between energy co-ops or co-ops that deal with energy and utilities in Vermont?
Yeah. I think it's. I don't think there are so much formal relationships as it is because organizations are co-ops, and as you mentioned, the co-op principle is that co-ops cooperate with each other. I think we have a collegial and a friendly and a supportive relationship with co-ops, so that I know that if I call, when I called Clem Nyland at City Market, Onion River Co-op, for example, he was happy to talk with me and answer questions and assist where possible. And, they helped us spread the word about the Co-op Solar program in their newsletter. And Avram, as you mentioned, served on our board, and Joe Bergeron from the Association of Vermont Credit Unions also served on our board in the early days. And then we introduced Sunwood, the company that supplies solar hot water heaters, to the Washington Electric Co-op, and said that our experience with them had been positive, and talked about the model that we'd developed in the relationship. And Washington Electric Co-op set up a similar program last year. So,
in sort of the direction that the co-op is heading, you mentioned lowering people's dependence on fossil fuels, and so I understand there are a lot of organizing going into energy efficiency. So what does that sort of look like?
Yep. I think it's important not to neglect heating oil. I mean, 50% of the homes in Vermont are heated with oil, and those people need oil, and they need whatever services that we and other oil dealers can provide in association with that. So they need reliable service, they need fair pricing, they need to have their equipment taken care of, and they need old equipment replaced with new, more efficient equipment. So that's important to us. It's important to other oil dealers. Excuse me. At the same time, if there are choices that people can make that will reduce the amount of oil that they use and lower their energy bills, then as a co-op, I feel that we have a responsibility to make those services available to our members. So the good news and the bad news as far as home energy improvements are concerned in Vermont is that there's a lot of research being done into existing programs and into people's decision making and what motivates people to do this work and why people don't do it and what the barriers are. So there's a tremendous amount out there that anyone wanting to get in the business can learn from. And I think, the negative, if there is a negative, is that despite all of the effort and the federal and the state incentives, there's still far too few people improving the energy performance of their homes, even when it's probably the single best investment you can make in your home. I mean, we had Dave Keefe from the Vermont Energy Investment Corporation speak to our annual meeting last year, and he's been a home performance contractor for many years, and he's a trainer and educator, and he's got scads of experience. And the way that he presented it was that, he asked people, he said, so how much money are you getting on, your checking deposit or your CD at the credit union these days? Well, 1%, 2% or something. He said, well, how would you like an investment that's in your home that will guarantee you a 10% return? Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Well, that's the sort of return that you can expect on energy efficiency upgrades in your home. So the key question is, if this is such a good idea, how come everyone's not doing it? And everyone's not doing it. The state has set a goal of 80,000 retrofits, residential retrofits in Vermont by 2020. And if things continue at the same pace, we'll get less than half of those retrofits done. So what we're trying to do is to figure out, how we can offer this service to our members, but how we can really sort of do a better job and really try and improve the service and improve the sign-ups and the conversions and the number of people who do the work.
Have you identified any avenues that seem particularly promising?
I think so. I mean, any other oil dealer or fuel dealer that wants to get into this business starts with a real advantage over a standalone contractor, because you already have an existing relationship with your customers, and you're in their homes. A lot of them, you're in the homes every year. So those are two huge advantages. If you're a standalone contractor wanting to do home energy improvement work, just to get in the door will cost you about $400 in marketing expenses. Well, oil dealers are in people's homes all the time, and they're actually paid to be there. People pay us to go there and do work. So, the fact that we deliver oil to 2,500 people means that we know how much they use, and we can measure the results of their home energy improvements. So, this person here in Montpelier, who's a co-op member, he had an energy audit done. They projected he would save 7% on his oil use. We tracked his use after he'd had the work done. He saved 34%. So that's a real sort of advantage that oil dealers have. We can say to you, we can show you how much you're going to be saving. But I think what we're going to start doing is our service technicians, every time they're in someone's home, they're going to start collecting information so we can identify people who are really good prospects for home energy improvements. That's people whose homes are really inefficient. And we're going to provide easy access to financing through via ECU. The other thing we're going to do, which I think is really important, we're going to check the contractor's work after it's being done. So if we come to your house, we'll recommend a contractor for you. We'll be there to provide advice for you all the way through. If you say, the contractor said this, I didn't understand that, we'll explain it to you. But when the work is done, before you pay the contractor, we're going to go out and inspect it. And if everything's up to snuff, great. We'll sign off on it, you pay the contract. If it's not, we'll get the contractor back and we'll get them to fix it. So we're trying to boost the confidence that our members can have that the work is going to be done to a high standard and that they will get the energy savings that the contractor says they will.
That's, I think, a really, to me, brilliant way of kind of leveraging one of the sort of less known about or less thought about cooperative advantages, which is that a cooperative organization doesn't have an incentive to behave in an adversarial way towards its member.
Yeah.
So in the same way that say you feel like you can maybe trust your food co-op more about the quality of the food you're getting because they're not there to make a profit off of you. They're there to sort of serve you in the same way that you can provide that kind of expertise without the uncertainty of, okay, I'm hiring this person to be my agent, but really, what if they're not? That incentive of saying, oh, if there is a windfall profit, that profit would be returned to the members. Sort of alters that relationship in a really powerful way.
I think it does. And while you were speaking, I was remembering a phone call I got a couple of months ago with someone who wasn't a member, and he called up and he had a question about his heating equipment. And so I talked with him and I answered his questions, and I established that he wasn't a co-op member. And so at the end of the conversation, I said, "So what made you call us?" And he said, "Well, I went online and I found the Energy Co-op of Vermont, and I figured with a name like that, I could trust you." So that was, he's only one person, but I think a lot of people see co-ops as being a bit different from a regular business. And the sort of performance guarantee, we'll inspect the work, I think that builds on that. So, if you're a member of the co-op, you use us to do this work, we'll make sure that it's done right. So,
do you want to talk a little bit more about what kind of what the member sort of experience is in terms of how the co-op is governed, how members sort of members engage with and participate in sort of choosing the board of directors, things like that?
Yeah, I think our member involvement is similar to other co-ops perhaps, and it's less than we would like. But, we have about 2,000 members. We have an annual meeting every year, and we get about 100 people who come to that. Like other co-ops, we learn the way that you get people to the annual meeting is to feed them. If we had a free bar, then, maybe we'd double our participation, but, we haven't gone that way so far. So, we get about 100 people show up, and we also get about that number of members vote for the board of directors.
Does the voting happen at the annual meeting, or is it a mail-in ballot? What's the method that's used?
It's both. We mail out the ballots about 3 weeks, the ballots and the candidates for the board and any changes to the bylaws or anything else that our members need to vote on. We mail that out about 3 weeks before the annual meeting. And then we also have voting's also available at the annual meeting if people haven't voted up till then.
And how do people sort of put their hat in the ring for the board of directors? Is it usually like a nominating committee? Where do those candidates kind of come from?
Yeah, we have a nominating committee, and I think we've only ever had 2 or 3 co-op members who've responded to something in a newsletter or in a mailing and saying, yeah, I'm interested in being on the board of directors. So mostly we identify people from our membership lists, or, if there's other people in the community that we know about and think might be interested in being on our board.
And are there other avenues by which you kind of can get feedback from members, kind of as membership or other sort of modes of participation beyond the board of directors?
Well, there was one we tried recently, which maybe not what you're referring to, but it was interesting to me. We were wood pellets vary a lot in quality, unlike heating oil. I mean, heating oil is pretty much heating oil, but there's really bad pellets and there's really good pellets. And the only really way that you know the difference is by burning them. So we're looking around at carrying another brand of pellets. And so we send out quite a lot of electronic newsletters these days to our members. So we sent one out and said, hey, we're looking for members who'd like to test some pellets for us. And we got about 20 people who responded. And that was for free. We'll give you a couple of bags for free. And so, this week we'll send out another newsletter with a link to a SurveyMonkey survey, and we'll just ask people some questions about how they were. And that's something that is really useful to the co-op and other members. And, it didn't cost our members anything. It was a real way for them to help us out. So
interesting.
Yeah.
On the pellet topic, so the renewableness of pellets can sort of vary depending on where they're sourced from, because it takes carbon to get them to where they're used. How does the co-op go about making those decisions?
How does
the co-op go about sourcing the pellets?
95% of the pellets we sell are made in Vermont at the mill down in North Clarendon. So, the overriding factor in our decision to purchase those pellets was, one, they're made in Vermont. And regardless of the environmental impact, made in Vermont is better than made in British Columbia or somewhere else that's a long way away. And the second factor is that, aside from being made in Vermont, the pellets are a very, very good pellet. And they're generally recognized as that. So it was those two things that led us to select Vermont wood pellets. Now we had, back to your question a little bit, Matt, we had a co-op member and who was also on our board of directors who burned pellets. And around the time when, we did for a while supply pellets that were sourced in British Columbia, and he's an engineer, so he did some work to try and figure out, the climate impact of British Columbia pellets compared with Vermont pellets. And, the Vermont pellets were better, not surprisingly. But so that just sort of reinforced, the decision we made, really.
Mm-hmm. One thing when we had folks from the Co-op Power come on, they've been working on actually they do a lot of solar projects. With one of their larger projects down in Massachusetts is creating a cooperatively owned biodiesel facility. Has there ever been any conversations about backward integration in the supply chain towards maybe like having the co-op produce its own pellets or other sorts of projects like that when you're kind of starting to look into the future of the co-op?
There hasn't. Excuse me. And I think that's a matter of the resources that we have available. So getting involved in manufacturing biodiesel is not a trivial undertaking. And, it's great that Co-op Power has done that. And a oil dealer in Central Vermont, Born Energy, has recently set up a facility to blend heating oil and biodiesel so they can offer different blends. And they had some federal money and some state money, I think, that helped them do that. So, and there's been a number of organizations who have tried to set up a pellet mill in Vermont, and so far they've all failed. There's one that's underway in the planning and the permitting is underway for one in southwestern Vermont. Or whether that'll get off the ground or not, I don't know. From our point of view, it would be great to have a pellet mill in Chittenden County, because the costs of transporting pellets from southern Vermont up here are significant. And in Europe, where pellet heat is much more common than it is here, particularly in Scandinavia and Austria, pellet mills are about 50 miles apart. So that's nothing like what we see in this part of the world yet.
Is there any production in kind of upstate New York on the other side of the lake? Or
there is. There's a pellet mill in Messina in New York, and there's another one in Schuyler, New York. Yep.
Are there any plans, or has the co-op sort of considered also offering not just solar hot water, but solar PV assistance or advisory, technical advice?
There's nothing formal in the works as yet. But PV is interesting, particularly because Vermont has group net metering. So, that creates a lot of opportunities for a buyer's group type arrangement so that, provided you find a suitable site and a suitable partner, and unfortunately, at least in some parts of Chittenden County, a suitable site for PV is hidden rather than highly visible. But whatever the criteria are, if you find a site that's suitable and you can put up, a decent-sized facility, you can go up to 150 kilowatts without getting involved in a lot of permitting work. So something like that where we could put up, we find a partner to put up 150 kilowatts of PV, we'd get better pricing on it because it's 150 kilowatts in one place rather than on however many rooftops it is. And we'd pass those savings on to our members, and people would sign up and they'd get the benefits via group net metering. That's an interesting idea, and I think it's probably something we'll look at sometime down the line. Particularly because if, the way that Suncommon is doing and that All Earth Renewables is doing, if you lease the equipment rather than buying it, your monthly payments are the same or less than what you're paying for regular electricity. So it's like, why wouldn't I? So, long answer, but we will be looking at it at some point. For now, the solar hot water and the home energy improvements are priorities for us. Particularly the home energy improvements, because for most people, it makes better economic sense to improve the energy performance of your home than it does to buy a new furnace, do solar hot water, do solar electric.
True.
So, I think that's a good place for us to focus.
And is that sort of the kind of when you are looking at the future of the co-op? Is that kind of the these three pieces that you have, pieces of the puzzle that you have now, the solar hot water, the pellets, and the oil? Are there any other things that you are kind of looking at for the future, or is the focus really on these three kind of like core pieces?
I think it's both. One of the pieces we're looking at is it's a piece of equipment, but it's got pretty large implications. They're air source heat pumps. And heat pumps are sort of mysterious to a lot of people. People don't understand what they are and what they do. But these things take heat from the outside air and use it to warm your home inside. And then in the summer, they do the opposite. They take they exhaust the hot air from your home and they replace it with cool air from outside. So these things will give you heat in the winter, air conditioning in the summer, and they also have a filtration component as well, so they'll improve your indoor air quality. And as far as the heating is concerned, they'll provide heat for about half the cost of heating oil, and they run on electricity. So there's a lot of interest in these heat pumps, and particularly for people who are, have got an old furnace or boiler that they might otherwise have to replace. If they put in one of these heat pumps, the heat pumps will keep working until it gets down to about -10, and below that they don't work. So for those days you have your old furnace or boiler working. And if it's old and inefficient, it doesn't matter so much if it's only going to be running a few days a year. So you put in a heat pump, that takes care of things most of the time, it saves you a lot of money, and you keep your old furnace or boiler and just run it, a few days a year. So I think that's a particular piece of technology that we're interested in, and that'll always come up. I think our members expect us to be aware of what sort of new technology is out there that may be useful to them. But I think in general, where I see the co-op going is we want to be able to go into someone's house and do an assessment of their home and look at everything. Look at the heating system, the air quality, the envelope, the insulation, the draft, the fuel that they use, where they're located, what their interests are, what their budget are, and recommend what's best for them. And that may be some products and services that we provide. It may be products and services that are provided by a partner or someone else we have a relationship with. But the focus would be going in and looking at someone's home in a whole sort of house, from a whole house perspective, and recommending what's best for them. And that's sort of the energy audits. get at that to a large degree, although they tend to focus on building envelope improvements, and some auditors are not as good as the heating system, and some of them don't look at solar potential, and some of them are not really tuned into financing and budget issues.
So sort of looking into the resources that are available for people who want to make energy efficiency improvements, there's a large push in the state in that direction. What sort of resources are available for folks?
Probably the single most significant resource is Efficiency Vermont, which is involved in thermal efficiency improvements now, in addition to their work on electric efficiency. So Efficiency Vermont runs the Home Performance with Energy Star program in Vermont, and under that program they have certified home performance contractors that are listed on their website. So if someone might want to make the improvements to their home, they can look at this list of contractors, and even if they don't know them, know that they meet certain criteria in order to be listed on Efficiency Vermont's website. And Efficiency Vermont also, and it's listed on their website, provides a whole range of rebates and incentives based on the kind of improvements that people make. So I would say that's the single largest resource. And then after that, as we mentioned before, I think VSECU is really important because of the range of loan products that they have available for people who want to make home energy improvements.
And one thing, just kind of stepping back a little bit, and the model that you guys have adopted of being a consumer sort of oil buying co-op that then has kind of added these additional sort of services and a focus on energy efficiency. Are you aware of like other co-ops around the country that are based on similar principles, or is the Energy Co-op of Vermont kind of unique in its being?
I think we might be unique in that we got into business by buying an oil dealer. That's an unusual way for a co-op to get started. The co-op power model or the Burlington Telecom model is more typical, I think, where a group of people get together and, because they're interested in forming a co-op to meet a particular need, and they get organized and they attract equity capital and et cetera, et cetera. So,
well, in some way, the Burlington Telecom thing seems to be following in the footsteps in that, the ultimate goal is to purchase the telecom from the city of Burlington. But
yeah, that's true.
I would definitely agree with the idea that the vast majority of co-ops you hear about kind of starting from zero and sort of building up from there.
Yeah. I mean, the advantage for us and for the Burlington Telecom co-op, if it gets off the ground, hopefully, is that you start with an existing customer base. So, in our case, we started with about 1,800 customers, and we had 3 oil trucks, and we had, 3 oil truck drivers, and we had an office manager and the former owner who knew a lot about the business. So that made it pretty easy to get started and to start running the business. The negative is that, we had a loan. So, we have to make our loan payments. So.
Going back to those early days, what made the group focus on a cooperative structure rather than sort of a more typical for-profit entity?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that, but I think in general it was because they felt that a co-op would be more inclined to would do a better job of taking care of low-income Vermonters. So the original business plan had an emphasis on providing products and services to low-income Vermonters, and a co-op, they felt that a co-op would be much better able to do that. So.
And the way in which, I guess the one other thing I was kind of wondering about the model is kind of dealing fuel in a cooperative way. Is that something that you had models to look at in other parts of the country as you were developing, kind of as you were going forward, or was it? Did you feel like oftentimes you guys were really breaking new ground?
I don't know that we're breaking new ground. I mean, I think people sometimes think that we're a buyers group, because we're a co-op, but we're not a buyers group. And there are buyers groups in Vermont, and the VHEAT program that run by VSECU is one of those. And the way that a buyer's group work is that, you have a number of members and it represents, so many gallons of oil or propane or whatever it is, and you go out to a supplier or a dealer and you say, I've got 1 million gallons of oil, what will you give me for a price? So you negotiate the best price you can. We haven't gone that way. The price that we pay for our heating oil from our supplier is the same that any other oil dealer pays for it. We may look more at a buyer's group type model down the line, but for now, as far as oil deliveries are concerned, we're very much like any other oil dealer in terms of what we pay for our product. The Co-op solar program has got a bit of a buyer's group influence because we went to Sunwood and based on the equipment supplier and based on the amount of business we expected to be doing, negotiated a discount for them off their regular price. Mm-hmm. So, if we do something with PV, we'll be looking for that same kind of model where we'll say, we've got 2,500 members and customers and we're going to market the program to you and we think we can generate this many sales, so in return, you won't have any marketing costs, so in return we expect you to, give our members a break on the product.
So we've got about 3 minutes left.
Okay.
And do you have any sort of final thoughts or final kind of pieces of the experience of having run a co-op and been involved in it that you feel you want to share, or anything else that we haven't touched on?
Well, there's one thing that comes to mind, which as our service manager shared with me a while ago, and he's got a background in weatherization. He was the assistant director at CVOEO Weatherization for a number of years. So he brings that efficiency perspective to what he does. And he's very good at selling new equipment. And I asked him one time what it was that, why he was good at it, what he thought made the difference. And he said, you know what it is? He said, oftentimes when I'm talking to people, I'll say, it doesn't matter to me whether you replace your old furnace or not with this new equipment. It doesn't matter to me because I'm not on commission. So I don't make anything out of this. And I think that's important in sort of, all aspects of our work and important for all co-ops that, you try and focus on what's important for your members. And sure, you're in business and you have to have revenues and you have to control your costs. But if your focus is on, what's best for your members rather than, boy, if I can sell 100 furnaces, and I get $100 commission on each one, I'll be doing really well. So most oil dealers have that commission model and we don't. And I think that's an important differentiator.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And it's been great to learn about the Energy Co-op of Vermont. So to learn more, you can, or if you want to see all of the interview, if you came in late, we'll be posting it on the Cooperative Vermont Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. Until next week, I think we're going to be having a representative from the Cabot Cooperative Creamery come in. So
we are 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now, yes. That should be interesting. But until then, there are, again, a few events coming up. The Vermont Federal Credit Union Annual Meeting on the 11th of April, the Vermont Credit Union Day in the State House on the 10th, and the State of Vermont's Cooperative Economy on the 17th. So some busy times coming up. Mm-hmm. But until then, you've been watching Cooperative Vermont. I'm Matthew Kropp.
And I'm Eric Davis.
Good night.